Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you all an enjoyable listening experience. Today's book is titled Fed Up with the subtitle Emotional Labor, Women, and the Way Forward. There's a term called womanishly fussy, describing someone who handles things indecisively, is concerned with trivial matters, and might be a bit verbose. Many might relate to experiences from childhood, like just stepping inside and being scolded for not properly placing the shoes taken off at home. I often get reminded by my girlfriend to put the washed dishes back in the sterilization cabinet, not just pile them up by the sink. Many might feel that women tend to nag more or worry more. This book offers a new explanation: they're not nagging, they're fed up. Fed up with what? The author introduces a term called emotional labor. Simply put, it's caring for life. There's a saying, you have to work very hard to look effortless, and this underlying hard work is likely emotional labor, just in maintaining the ubiquitous everyday life. For instance, taking out the trash is a tangible labor, but noticing when to take out the trash is an invisible emotional labor. The trouble is, this labor in life often goes unrewarded and unnoticed. Many women surely have this experience, a moment of emotional outburst not really because of the misplaced shoes but due to trying too hard for everything to seem effortless for too long. The author of this book, Gemma Hartley, is an American journalist. In 2017, she wrote a viral article for Harper's Bazaar with the same title as this book. It resonated widely, garnering millions of shares, and the term emotional labor discussed in the article became a hot topic in Europe and America, even debated by the BBC. Drawing from her personal experiences and interviews with hundreds of women, along with insights from adjusting her own relationship with her husband, Hartley eventually penned this book. Within its pages, she not only demonstrates the significance of the invisible emotional labor but also shares real experiences with her husband, illustrating how to balance emotional labor to enrich and harmonize everyone's lives. The book is divided into 3 parts. The first part delves into what emotional labor truly is and how it manifests in family life. The second part explores emotional labor in broader contexts like the workplace and society, further understanding the imbalance in roles. The third part discusses practical ways to establish a more balanced distribution of emotional labor. Part 1. Just now, we briefly introduced emotional labor. In fact, many caregiving-related terms can be encompassed by emotional labor, such as emotional work, mental burden, household management, and administrative labor. This labor is a form of effort that makes life comfortable and joyful. It's the work of oiling the wheels to ensure the smooth operation of the entire system. In other words, maintaining the appearance of an orderly life and making people within it feel more comfortable relies on invisible emotional labor. However, when only one party shoulders the burden of emotional labor, it leads to accumulating stress for that individual, while the person being taken care of may constantly feel controlled by others' arrangements. This imbalance in division of labor isn't ideal for either party. According to the author's definition, emotional labor is the combination of emotional and life management, the unrewarded and unseen work we do to make those around us comfortable and happy. This might sound a bit abstract. Let's listen to Hartley's experience for a better understanding. Hartley's famous piece actually stemmed from an emotional breakdown she had. Mother's Day was approaching, and as a mother of 3 children, Hartley expressed to her husband, Robert, her desire for a gift: house cleaning services, especially focusing on cleaning the bathroom and floors, and perhaps even washing the windows if the price was right. Robert wasn't particularly thrilled and hoped Hartley would change her mind, suggesting a simpler gift, preferably something easily purchasable online. Hartley insisted on her choice, and it wasn't until the day before Mother's Day that her husband finally accepted reality and began inquiring about the prices. Upon hearing the quote, Robert exclaimed it was too expensive. Why pay someone for what he could do himself? In their household, Hartley managed the finances, and Robert questioned if it was truly necessary and if she really wanted it. However, for Hartley, hiring a cleaner wasn't just about cleaning, it was about relieving herself from worrying about the tidiness of their home. At that time, Hartley had just become a freelancer, with more work and less time for house chores, which made her feel a bit guilty. Moreover, she knew that calling a cleaner wasn't as simple as making a phone call. it involved asking friends for recommendations, contacting several companies for quotes, tasks that her husband taking care of beforehand would have been a significant gift for her. On Mother's Day, Hartley indeed received 2 surprises, a necklace and a husband delving into cleaning the bathroom. However, with 3 children in the house, Hartley still had to take care of them alone. After her husband tidied up the bathroom, Hartley happened to walk past it but was busy picking up shoes, clothes, and socks that her husband had left outside and didn't notice the state of the bathroom, which left Robert a bit disappointed. The final straw overwhelming Hartley's emotions was waiting in the adjacent closet. As she entered, she tripped over a large box lying on the floor. A few days earlier, Robert had taken down the box from the shelf to prepare for gift wrapping, took out the gift bags and wrapping paper, and then forgot to put the box back. It remained there on the floor. Every time Hartley needed to collect dirty clothes or choose an outfit, she had to kick the box aside, which irritated her immensely. For her, she had to fetch a chair from the kitchen, climb up, and place it back on the high shelf, whereas Robert, being tall enough, only needed to lift the box. Thinking about this, Hartley must have been even more frustrated. Seeing Hartley upset, Robert was also puzzled. He believed that if Hartley simply asked him to put the box back, it would have been done. Upon hearing this, Hartley finally broke down. With tears in her eyes, she said, "That's the point, I don't want to have to ask for these things." Perhaps to Robert, having prepared a valuable necklace and meeting his wife's desire for a clean bathroom should have made him a good husband. Instead, she didn't compliment the cleanliness of the bathroom and blamed him for not proactively moving the box. There was some injustice in his eyes. Yet, for Hartley, the box was clearly a hindrance, something simple for Robert to do that had been left undone for days, and now she was being faulted for not asking, as if the box wouldn't be troublesome or didn't need fixing unless she mentioned it. Moreover, he only cleaned the bathroom and neglected other household chores as initially requested by Hartley, no floors or windows. Is Hartley merely a grumbling woman? Not at all. She's just had enough. Let's review the 2 main characteristics of emotional labor in this story, no compensation and invisibility, to understand the emotional labor behind this breakdown experience. Going back to the argument's beginning, why did Hartley want domestic help? It was because she sought someone else's compensated service to replace her uncompensated efforts. Even the process of finding domestic help involved unpaid effort, making it a gift as well. Starting from this notion, let's discuss the uncompensated nature of emotional labor, which provides emotional value but doesn't receive corresponding returns. When speaking of emotional labor, we often begin with tangible caregiving tasks like housework, which few doubt involves labor, sweeping, mopping daily, causing backaches, and fatigue. It's certainly labor. But when asked if housework has economic compensation, some might question it. Renowned Japanese sociologist Jizuko Ueno offers a unique analysis, defining housework as unpaid labor. The logic is simple: if housework had no value, why would there be cleaning service companies charging for it? It's the same task. When Hartley does it every day without pay, but when someone else does it for a day, it becomes too expensive for her husband to consider paying. This further emphasizes the substantial value of routine housework. In Ueno's words, this labor differs from paid work related to the production and circulation of goods. It's not reflected in the market but resides outside in households. Nurturing life, caring for life, and seeing life through its course, all these constitute unpaid labor, a form of reproductive labor. Reproduction might sound abstract, but it refers to ensuring that after exhausting productive labor, returning home allows relaxation, rejuvenation, a regeneration of labor power. This care is essential for societal and economic functionality. Hartley advocates that beyond tangible caregiving, invisible emotional labor is also part of reproduction. Aside from coordinating and organizing household tasks to provide a comfortable living environment, attention to family members' emotions, offering solace, praise, etc., hold significance. For instance, when the husband cleaned the bathroom, remembering to praise him, or comforting him when he faced job loss, these moments devoid of physical labor might bring more satisfaction to family members than a well-prepared meal. However, in modern family divisions of labor, the contributions are severely imbalanced. For instance, when Hartley tended to the children and tidied clothes while her husband cleaned the bathroom, he failed to acknowledge her efforts and instead felt disappointed by her lack of praise for his work. In essence, the individual managing emotional labor provides emotional value, ensuring continuous economic production, but lacks corresponding rewards both emotionally and economically. Now, let's explore invisibility. It encompasses continuous mental concern and attention to details while performing tasks. In Hartley's experience, both noticed the hindering box, but only the one recognizing the issue actually worried about it. Our housework doesn't start from scratch, it starts from a deficit. One must consciously acknowledge the task at hand to plan subsequent labor, and this thought process is invisible, the invisibility of emotional labor. Hartley introduced a term, designated worrier, indicating that many trivial household details are results of their worry. Where a key hook should go, the position of a sewing kit, whether shampoo needs replenishing, the arrangement of items on the coffee table, and so forth. For someone not worrying, a simple inquiry about an item's location suffices. But for the designated worrier, beneath accumulated invisible emotional labor, life becomes a complex web. Only they possess a clear map, responsible for guiding others through this web, ensuring everyone feels secure. In Chinese, noticing what needs tidying is having things in mind, and the mental exertion required to maintain this state is invisible emotional labor. Numerous details in our household chores deserve concern. One task breaks down into 20 subtasks. The preparatory and concluding phases of these chores, though physical labor, are invisible. One chore may contain multiple invisible details controlling it. For instance, taking out the trash. Before disposing of it, one must ensure nothing is left behind, check for spare trash bags, decide when to take it out, consider the type of waste being disposed, organic or recyclable, sometimes even ensure the trash is properly sorted, check for any spills, replace the bag once emptied, ensuring it snugly fits the bin's edge. In summary, emotional labor, as a caregiving form of work, is particularly common in households. It involves ensuring both physical and psychological comfort, yet it remains uncompensated and invisible. Uncompensated means not just the absence of economic returns but also emotional ones. Invisibility, likewise, has two layers, the invisible mental exertion as psychological activity and the tangible attention to minuscule details often overlooked. With cumulative efforts lacking corresponding rewards, it's no wonder it can become nagging, ultimately leading to frustration over trivial matters. Looking back at Hartley's case, another issue surfaces, transforming emotional labor from care into a burden, unequal division of labor. Only one party worries, while the other waits for care, increasingly reliant on it without reciprocating. This imbalance often surfaces along gender lines. The common household structure of men work outside, women inside results in women often managing emotional labor, while this internalized attention is also typically borne by women in the workplace, leaving them squeezed between career and family responsibilities. Part 2. Now, let's look beyond the household to understand the imbalances in emotional labor more thoroughly. In essence, emotional labor in the workplace involves more than handling details or maintaining comfort. It includes suppressing emotions that might cause dissatisfaction, a cultivated skill. Why call it a skill? Let's start with the origin of the term emotional labor. It wasn't coined by Hartley. Scholars initially introduced it in the context of workplace duties. We've previously discussed Ollie Russell Hochschild's book, The Managed Heart, similar to this topic, and Hochschild is the one who coined the term emotional labor. However, Hochschild discussed how working mothers needed to continue domestic duties at home, calling it the second shift. But what we're addressing here is the first shift. As far back as 1983, Hochschild, studying flight attendants, observed their controlled emotions, displaying pleasant facial expressions and gentle body language to ensure passengers' comfort, thus introducing the term emotional labor. Through airline training research, Hochschild categorized methods of emotion control into surface acting and deep acting. How to understand this? Put simply, surface acting is, you're not genuinely happy, your smile is merely a facade. Deep acting, however, means smiling from within, genuinely feeling care and delight. There's a saying that the ultimate lie is deceiving oneself. Deep acting serves that purpose. According to company training, flight attendants can fabricate stories, rationalize passenger behavior, empathize, detach emotions as the involved party, and deal with unruly passengers by suppressing their anger and fatigue, treating them as attention-seeking children to pacify their emotions. Did you notice something? Pacifying children, something mothers often do. This means the mother-child relationship serves as an ideal model for emotional labor, where serving customers isn't about treating them as gods but rather as children. This is relevant not just at home but also in the workplace. Flight attendants employ extensive emotional labor to create a warm, reassuring ambience within the confined airplane space, encouraging passengers to feel at home and potentially become regulars for the airline. This service-oriented approach that ensures customer comfort turns emotions into a standardized commodity, training service workers to offer their emotions. This emotional control in the workplace is emotional labor present in many service industry roles. The book narrates an experience of a nurse, a perioperative care provider responsible for continuous patient care before, during, and after surgery. Besides meeting doctors' demands, she also has to attend to patients' emotional needs. This nurse described how harshly doctors often treated them, with scolding being a daily affair. Patients, too, frequently shouted at them, calling her a lousy nurse. But as a professional, regardless of who scolded her, she had to maintain composure and control her emotions. She said, "You have to ensure everyone is happy, even if you're not happy yourself." Once, during kidney washing, a patient accidentally pricked her with a used needle. The room often had patients with infectious diseases like HIV, and immediately, she feared the terrifying consequences if infected: a broken marriage, infertility, severe illness, and possible death. But she was on duty and couldn't immediately check. However, that momentary panic was noticed by the patient, who blamed her for overreacting. She had to keep smiling, engage with the patient for 4 hours, pretending nothing had happened, before getting tested. After her shift, she sat in her car alone, sobbing, releasing the fear and frustration she had bottled up all day. In this example, you'll notice similarities between emotional labor in the workplace and that within the family. When the nurse used deep acting to manage her emotions, she didn't receive rewards like a piece rate wage. For instance, calming down 4 patients today wouldn't earn her 4 chicken legs. Instead, everyone assumes it's her duty. In the service industry, professional emotional labor is deemed as a one-way, unrequited effort. This aligns with the uncompensated and invisible features of emotional labor within families. However, emotional labor, regardless of where it's performed, leads to emotional exhaustion. For example, this nurse needed to vent and readjust her mindset after work. But if she brings this frustration home, disrupting family comfort, she'd have to perform new emotional labor. Consequently, she's forced to find solace amidst the strain between work and home, perhaps crying alone in her car after work, making it harder for her emotions to relax completely. Moreover, many caregiving roles are predominantly filled by women: nurses, shop clerks, flight attendants, early childhood educators, and so on. According to official statistics from 2022 in my country, 76% of flight attendants are female, and the proportion of female nurses reaches as high as 97%. Although emotional labor is prevalent in the service industry, specific roles that demand higher emotional labor show clear gender differences. These gender disparities reflect the societal understanding of emotional labor. This understanding intertwines with gender perceptions, women being more emotional and better at emotional care, although these skills indeed require professional training. Hartley believes this happens because women are traditionally seen as life-bearers, leading to the assumption that childcare is their natural responsibility, neglecting the emotional labor involved. After giving birth, she became a full-time homemaker. When others wondered why she looked tired despite not working, she pointed to her crying child, and they understood. The impression of women being responsible for maternal duties extends to emotional caregiving, worsening the imbalance in emotional labor. This isn't to say men don't undertake emotional labor, it's more often perceived as a uniquely female skill. In reality, women shoulder most of the emotional labor, facing greater emotional burdens both at home and in their professions. There's a saying in China, women hold up half the sky, but that's exhausting. The emotional burden behind emotional labor needs recognition. In conclusion, in this part, we see that emotional labor outside the household largely manifests as emotional acting, especially deep acting. Due to societal gender perceptions, women bear a more substantial emotional labor burden, resulting in increased exhaustion for working women. How can we change this situation? Interestingly, shortly after Hartley gained recognition, her husband lost his job, allowing them to reconsider their division of labor. Part 3, we've mentioned earlier that emotional labor might not require training but certainly needs nurturing. Often, women undertake most of the emotional work, sometimes solely, which is a fundamental cause of disharmony in many family relationships. So, where should we begin? Let's combine Hartley's experiences to explore potential solutions. I'll divide this phase into two perspectives, one from the standpoint of the bearer and the other from that of the cared for. Let's start with the bearer's side. Many women may have pondered, can't I stop worrying every day instead of being criticized for it? That's the enigma of emotional labor. Just like a craftsman develops unconscious muscle memory through prolonged work, long-term emotional labor also fosters a memory, unable to stop caring even when one wishes not to. When you're accustomed to providing such care, it's hard to stop feeling something's lacking. You've become accustomed to it, noticing when the person taking over isn't doing it adequately, compelling you to say, let me do it instead. It's not about being a control freak, but more like an emotional memory akin to muscle memory. This isn't to say emotional labor is negative or that we should abandon it. On the contrary, Hartley suggests that emotional labor can become a skill-enhancing life quality, not just a responsibility of one person to instruct and arrange things. So, the first step in altering emotional labor involves liberating the bearer from it, learning to let go and relinquish perfectionism. Hartley poses a pertinent question that could serve as the starting point for changing mindsets: is it necessary for you to shoulder everything? Hartley, while not a perfect example in this aspect, had a common mindset. She didn't believe Robert could manage well if she let go. She grew up learning that tasks like folding clothes and tidying plates were a mother's responsibility. No one ever said it was Dad's job. She strongly doubted whether men could handle these tasks. Once, she entrusted Robert with caring for their child while she focused on writing, only to discover a mess upon her return, with Robert out cycling. She didn't have time to resume her previous responsibilities and had to let Robert attempt them. She appreciated Robert taking on more emotional labor but was also angry that he didn't follow the previously effective routine. Hartley felt frustrated, wondering if Robert could never learn. How did Hartley untangle this dilemma? During her research, she found men in the world who cared for others just like their female partners. Anthropologist Hewlett studied a tribe called the Aka in Africa, finding them to be the world's best fathers. Hewlett discovered that Aka fathers spent 47% of their time with their children, almost equally dividing caregiving and hunting tasks between parents. When Aka mothers were away, Aka fathers voluntarily prepared formula and comforted the children. They attended gatherings while holding their children, dining and conversing while carrying them. Hartley suddenly realized that men aren't inherently incapable of caring. It was her own inhibitions that hindered her relationship adjustment with Robert. Because she didn't trust Robert, she continuously interfered, making it difficult for Robert to learn her ways or establish his organizational system. The next crucial step involves trusting your partner because emotional labor isn't an innate talent but something to be cultivated. During the transition, reminders are helpful but allowing the other person to learn, accepting different organizational methods is essential. The most comfortable way isn't necessarily the only way, and this insistence leads to unnecessary emotional labor. Both parties can discover new patterns through trial and error. After these two steps, the third step becomes critical: initiating dialogue. You might find it contradictory after emphasizing letting go and trusting your partner. However, dialogue helps smoothen the transition phase, allowing the other person to understand what needs to be done more quickly. Avoid organizing and demanding tasks, as this only increases emotional labor. Speak up when the burden becomes too heavy, don't be afraid to seek help. Hartley failed to express her emotional concerns properly on Mother's Day, and Robert wasn't unwilling to assist. He simply lacked the experience and didn't know where to start. Emotional labor isn't just physical, it involves monitoring small details and managing the big picture, something challenging for inexperienced individuals. Now shifting to the cared for side, the first step involves acknowledging the genuine existence of emotional labor. Actually, if you were to ask someone who doesn't usually engage in emotional labor what their ideal life looks like, the answer might sound very minimalistic, perhaps simply a stable job, a place to live, ordering takeout for meals, playing games, and sleeping when they're home. Such a life isn't necessarily bad, but it oversimplifies things. When it comes to implementing this, countless unavoidable details emerge, making it hard to ensure comfort in life. The primary reason is that someone else usually manages these details, so they don't come to mind. Only when we completely change our expectations regarding the division of emotional labor can we potentially lead the best, most fulfilling lives. It's worth repeating, the first step towards balance is for the bearer to dare to let go. But the cared for also need to recognize this labor's existence, listen to their partner's needs, and be willing to take over tasks they hadn't considered. We need to realize that emotional labor is an invisible guarantee behind life quality, not an obsession of control. To change this situation, the second step is gradually establishing a new consciousness. It's not about helping out with emotional labor but doing it together. It involves actively scanning around to see what hasn't been done, training oneself to be attentive rather than dwelling on what has already been accomplished. Hartley poses several questions that hit home. When I listened, I reflected. She asked, do you do things voluntarily without being asked? Do you notice everything your partner does for you, for the children, for your extended family, for friends? Do you receive as much praise as you give? When you say you do a lot, is that compared to other men or your partner? When I examine myself from this perspective, I always find I haven't done enough. There's a lot of care I want to give to friends and family but haven't because of the exhaustion of emotional labor. That's why the author states that emotional labor, as care and concern, is something worth learning. Hartley suggests planning relaxation activities, making time for things you enjoy, all part of emotional labor. It's also about planning joyous events that nurture relationships, making friends and family feel your emotional investment. It leads to a more equal relationship where you know the emotional labor you put in is as much as you receive. The third step remains opening dialogue, clarifying each other's needs. In these conversations, a few things require special attention: what emotional labor is genuinely beneficial to us, and what isn't. Both sides need to build their systems, establish their emotional connections, and determine their priorities rather than oscillating in someone else's life. We can ask ourselves, what emotional labor makes me comfortable? Is the emotional labor I'm doing now based on others' expectations or my own? This helps pinpoint the most necessary and beneficial emotional labor at present. Hartley started letting go of perfectionism, abandoning unnecessary standards like towels needing perfect folds, while Robert also realized he neglected too many details, like cluttering the stove. Hartley learned to turn a blind eye occasionally, and Robert proactively inquired about what was bothering his wife. Both coordinated to align more with each other's standards. Finally, let's review. For those undertaking emotional labor, the first step is letting go, the second is trusting your partner's learning ability, and the third is dialogue with your partner. For those cared for, the first step is recognizing emotional labor, the second is actively considering what else needs to be done, and the third is dialogue. Through dialogue, we transform a unilateral web into a system both participate in, no longer unilaterally giving or waiting for instructions. In conclusion, how did Hartley and Robert fare? Hartley continued writing books and attending events, flourishing in her career, while Robert struggled to find a job. They held several meetings, truly exchanging roles, with Robert contributing more emotional labor, and Hartley being the cared for one. One afternoon, Robert sat at home lost in thought. Hartley assumed he was stressed about unemployment, but Robert's response was, "I feel there are things I should do, but I can't remember." Hartley realized Robert had genuinely learned. When Hartley wrote for Fashion Basha, it was meant as a warning to Robert about the impending divorce if things didn't change. However, as emotional labor gradually balanced between them, Robert not only saw the work but also truly recognized Hartley's efforts. He found his value in the family and smoothly navigated the marital crisis. Honestly, before reading this book, as someone who wasn't fond of cleaning at home, I always thought it was just a physical labor issue. I thought I had helped enough, so why wasn't my partner satisfied? Now I understand, indeed, the devil hides in the details. If you've ever heard your mother or wife nagging, you should know, they're exhausted. That moment of losing control isn't always about wanting to control everything, it's time to help the one you love. If you're the exhausted one, don't be afraid to change. It's never too late for a more balanced relationship. Trust your partner and make changes together. We can both become protagonists in our families. We might not achieve perfect balance, but through participation, we can strive together to overcome obstacles, tailor a solution that fits us, and move forward confidently. Alright, that's all the content I've got for you. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you all for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with your friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice to achieve our financial goals and create a better future together. Thank you, and goodbye.